Hi, my name is Tom, and I'd like to introduce you to the Gospel according to St. Mark. We hear this Gospel so often in the life of the church, and we sometimes lose a sense of how special of a document it really is. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of points about this Gospel, and I hope by the end of it you feel like you know a little bit more about this Gospel, and also maybe be a little more excited about participating in the Bible study that we have here at St. Ambrose every Thursday night. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about just one verse of this Gospel today, and it's the first verse, but let's check it out. Here's what it says at the beginning of the Gospel. It says that this is the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And in this one tiny little verse, there's a whole lot of layers of meaning happening. First, it begins with the words in the beginning, which is a reminder of what happens in the story of Genesis, of creation. This is almost like a new creation happening, that this whole Christian movement that's beginning is almost like a restart of creation. The next part of the verse is the term good news, and that's actually where we get the word gospel from. The gospel comes from the Old English Godspell, or good news. And it's just a reminder that what we're hearing from Mark is good news. It's something that's supposed to radically impact our lives, supposed to transform our lives. The messages of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Well, right off the bat, the word Christ, it comes from the Greek word Christos, and it means anointed one or Messiah. It means that Jesus, this earthly figure, is God's anointed holy person. He's set aside for a special purpose, and he's the promised one of Israel. With that, though, he's not just an earthly figure, he is the Son of God. And so this whole message together is of God who's starting creation over again and doing something brand new that is good news, and it's the message of Jesus, who is the Messiah, but is also the Son of God at the same time. And then it goes on to the next verse goes on and tells you how Jesus is the fulfillment of the prophets. Now, some other fun facts about this gospel. One is that the gospel, which was originally composed in Greek, and shares a lot in common with the literature of antiquity. It has a lot in common with the Greco-Roman bios, or biography, which are just lives of people, though there is one big difference. Unlike the Greco-Roman bios, and unlike Matthew and Luke's gospel, it doesn't have an infancy narrative. It doesn't tell the story of Jesus as a little boy or being born. This is important because for our purposes, Jesus is the beginning of a movement. It's not just a matter of the beginning of a person, it's the beginning of the whole Christian movement. With that, you also have different kind of literature, like the lives of the prophets that are recounted in the Hebrew Bible, and the lives of wonder workers as well. Another fun fact about this gospel is that the gospel is likely wartime literature. Many scholars date the gospel to around the time of the Jewish War, which happened from 66 CE to 70 CE. The Jewish people were engaged in a series of conflicts with Rome due to religious tensions and taxation. And for many people, this felt like this was the end of the world. Clues in the text point to Christian persecution as well as contemporary events like the destruction of the Jewish temple in 70 CE. Because of this, Mark's gospel has what's referred to as an apocalyptic flavor. He's talking about the end because things kind of feel like they're the end to the listeners. And in a way, it's not just an end, but kind of a new beginning as well. Now, another fun fact about the gospel is that the gospel has a message to not be complacent. Now is the time for God's action and our response. A favorite word for Mark is the Greek word euthus. And what that means is immediately. So for example, the gospel will say things like, immediately he called them, or immediately they left their nets and followed him, or immediately he spoke to them and said, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. The gospel keys into the importance of the present moment. Right now matters. So when we read this gospel, we should have a sense of that immediacy. The last point I want to make is that the gospel wants us to think about the big picture. Jesus is part of the big picture of biblical history. He is the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Hebrew Bible. He signals the end of the world, or at least the end of the world as we know it. He's talking about big things like salvation and deliverance. Jesus is not simply talking and healing the sick, though those are important things that he does throughout the gospel. He's in a cosmic battle with evil. He fights with demons as an exorcist. The battle of good and evil will culminate in his crucifixion and will be supremely answered by his resurrection. I hope you found this introduction to the Gospel of Mark useful. And again, I'd love it if you could check out our Bible study that happens on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. where we're going to unpack this book even more. And I hope you like these video updates and they're useful for your own spiritual life. Thank you so much and God bless.